Hello, welcome to CaFae Convos. I am your host, CM Alonji. The C stands for Chris or Christina. I don't care, use whatever. And today we are talking to a gal whose YouTube videos I have been watching for the last 7+ years, like pre-pandemic. All of her writing videos and how to get yourself published videos, and a course and author in her own right of, I believe, dark fantasy romance. I'm not sure. I haven't read them, but I'm sure they're awesome. Jenna, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And yeah, my name is Jenna Moreci. I am a romantasy author, or more specifically, dark fantasy romance. I've got the first two books in the Savior series are out. That's The Savior's Champion and The Savior's Sister. And the third book, The Savior's Army, is available for pre-order right now. So definitely check it out. I also write writing craft books. So I've got Shut Up and Write the Book. That's out already, and it'll give you the step-by-step process for writing your very own book. And my second writing craft book came out. When did it come out? It came out in October. And that's How to Write Romantasy. So that's what I do. I'm also a YouTuber at Writing with Jenna Moreci, where I give lots of writing advice with a hefty dose of sarcasm and dick jokes and F-bombs.
Yeah, same. For those of you listening in, because of course you're only listening because I never post the video parts of these videos. She also has her dog Butters on her lap. So
Yes.
weird licking noises, that's what's going on there.
Yes, she is currently licking my cheek. She's like, "Thank you for bringing me." And so if you hear any random licks or growls, I promise it's the tiny dog.
What type of dog is that, by the way?
She was a rescue, so we didn't know. They just knew that there was Chihuahua in the mix because she was like 2 pounds when we got her.
Right, yeah, tiny.
So we got her DNA tested, just to see if she had any underlying conditions we should be
fox.
Sure. Right. But yeah, so she's half Chihuahua, and then the other half is just a random mix. So there's like Dachshund, Pekingese, Poodle, Cocker Spaniel, just everything is in the other half. So we just say she's a Chihuahua mix.
Honestly, yeah, no, that's fair. I don't have dogs myself, unfortunately, because the apartment won't allow them.
Oh.
But my parents do have dogs, and it'll be a year in February that they adopted 2 litter mates. And what's really funny is that they're from the same litter, they have the exact same DNA, but one of them got the corgi genes and the other didn't. So every time I visit my parents, Ruby gets taller and taller and taller, and she looks very much like a black lab with a little bit of collie, because those the other two. While Jade doesn't get bigger at all. She's gotten a little wider and heavier, but yeah, no, she stays the same. She's got the classic corgi body with black lab pelt, basically.
That's so
And it's
cute.
hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny because when you do the DNA test, it links you with other dogs that were tested that are from the same family, I guess, or like they're related some way. And all the other dogs she was related to were all these Cocker Spaniels that look nothing like her. And then there's this little Chihuahua in the family tree, like, "Hi, I'm here."
Gosh, there was the We Rate Dogs guy. I don't know if you follow him. He shared this story where it turned out this family, they had a dog, the dog passed away. They adopted a new dog who was the old one's spitting image, but this one was older than their previous dog. And when they got a DNA test, they found out that their new dog was their previous dog's father.
Really? Oh, that's crazy.
Yes, I was like, what is it? Like, this is the best soap opera I have ever seen.
Right.
I want all my soap operas to be like all the surprise family plot twists. It needs to be this.
Right.
Sopranos take a back seat. All right, we did not come here to talk about dogs. I just get easily distracted by puppos. So you said you write romantasy and fantasy romance. Maybe this is just me being a romantic asexual, but why fantasy romance? Why not like political fantasy or fantasy horror or whatever.
I've loved fantasy romance ever since I was a little kid. My favorite movies growing up, my dad was very heavily influential in the movies I liked. He had me and my sister watching Clash of the Titans, the original, not the remake,
Mm,
The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Jason and the Argonauts, The Mysterious Island. So I always loved,
very
you know,
Greek mythology.
yes, exactly. So I always loved stories that were sort of half, fantasy and battles and danger and heroism, and then half falling in love and, uh, you know, whisking away together. And I also love these movies because even though they're pretty ancient and, they're obviously like older movies, there's a lot of problematic elements, but I also liked that in a lot of these movies, the female love interest still was like involved in the battle. She played her part. She wasn't just a damsel in distress. She was heavily involved in solving whatever the problem was. And then
Yeah.
so that's just something I've been interested in ever since I was a little kid. I've always loved that stuff. And it's funny that you mentioned the whole the aromantic asexual, because I'm gray sexual, but heteroromantic. So that's another thing, is a lot of people are always like, oh, that's so funny that you write romance. It's like, well,
Look, some of the steamiest love scenes that you've ever read, it turns out the author is ace.
right.
Which is
Exact.
just like, either we want, like, obviously it's a huge spectrum and every ace person is different and blah blah blah. But in my experience, 99% of the time, either an ace reader and author wants absolutely nothing to do with romance, or like they write and read and consume like the steamiest, spiciest shit you've ever
Right.
laid eyes on. And there's
I,
very rarely any middle ground.
I have a theory about that, and I think that's because ace and gray ace people are more aware of the different types of attractions, because
Mm.
uh, they all exist. They exist for everyone, but allosexual people, they often conflate sexual attraction, romantic attraction, aesthetic attraction. They often don't know the
Yes.
difference. Whereas with ace and gray ace people, we very much know the difference between sexual attraction, aesthetic attraction, platonic attraction, romantic. We know all the differences, because there are some that we don't feel, and then some that
Yeah.
we do, and constantly.
Usually we'll like conflate them anyway. Like in my experience, I did date a guy in college because he was very aesthetically pleasing, and
Mhm.
I was mixing up my aesthetic attraction to him with sexual, and then my non-existent sexual attraction to him with romantic. But like after 6 years, you look back on it and you're able to kind of peel them apart and go, oh,
Right.
it was just because he had a nice face.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's confusing at first, because growing up I was that person who every time people would be like hooking up and stuff, I would be like, "Oh, that's a joke, right? Like no one's actually horny, right?" I didn't
Yes,
understand. I thought
you
that
think people
people
are exaggerating.
yeah, I thought people were hooking up like because it was the cool thing to do and they didn't actually want to. And then once I got to college, it's like, oh no, people actually want to. Oh, maybe this is me. So then it's like it's like there's this period of confusion, and then there's this period of intense studying and understanding. But that's always my theory, because I've read a lot of great romances by asexual and aromantic people, and I think it's because there's that better understanding of the differences, and so it makes it
Mhm.
easier to write the different types of attraction in books. Whereas sometimes, and obviously not all the time, but sometimes I'll read books by allosexual people and it's just horny the whole way through, and I'm supposed to expect that they fell in love for that reason only. And I'm like, well, that's falling in love and being horny are not the same thing, but okay,
Mhm.
I guess.
Yeah. No, for me, because I have such, there's always the whole write what you know type of thing,
Hmm.
which, you can always know more because it just means do your research most of the time. But when it
Right.
comes to the human relationships, I have found that I do tend to draw on my own experiences, at least when it comes to like friendships and families. But when it comes to romance, I have such limited experience with all that stuff that a lot of times the romantic partners in my stories and books, they tend to be based off for after my parents or my grandparents, or now recently my brother and his girlfriend.
Aw.
Because like they all have very healthy relationships, but they're also very different dynamics. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, what's making this work and what's not making this work?
I
And
like that. That's the thing is, I give writing advice, and I get a lot of people who are like, how do I write a healthy relationship? And I'm like, well, I'm sure you see healthy relationships around you. What do they
hopefully
look
you're in healthy relationships.
Exactly. It's like, what do they look like? A lot of it comes down to observation. People will ask me,
Mhm.
like, how do I write an unlikable character? I'm like, well, what do you not like in people? Like, write
Yeah.
that, you know?
Exactly. And it's like, well, like Jane Austen, who wrote Pride and Prejudice, which is like the first modern romance novel,
Uh-huh.
arguably. And she wrote all of these incredible romances that I love, except for Emma. Um, and like it turns out she was never married.
Hmm.
She was proposed to twice, but she only really liked one of the guys. And like the more you read about her life, the more it's just like, was she gray arrow maybe? Like something
Hmm.
like that, somewhere on that spectrum. It's hard to tell, but like she was so good at observation that
Exactly.
even 200 years later, people are just like, these are the greatest stories ever, and these people are awesome, and I want a Mr. Darcy in my life, and blah blah blah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, if Jane Austen can write an awesome romance without being in an awesome romance, so can you. Um,
Completely.
so most, if not, correct me if I'm wrong, but most, if not all of your books are self-published, right?
I am now officially a hybrid author.
Hybrid.
So I have some indie books. How to Write Romantasy was my first traditionally published book through 10 Speed Press of Penguin Random House. So it was very exciting. And I can't say anything yet, but I have other trad pub things in the background, but I can't say that. That's all I'll say.
Surprises and presences incoming. Got it.
Yes.
Um, so for the noobs in the crowd, self-published means that you do not go through a literary agent or a traditional publisher. You do everything yourself and
Yes.
or hire individual contractors like editors and cover artists to get your book on shelves. Traditional published, trad pub means you go through a traditional publisher. A hybrid means you do both.
Yes.
So it's not like now you're doing trad pub, but your Saviors series and your other stuff was all self-published.
Yes.
What led to that decision? Why not let a trad publisher do all the work for you?
That's a great question. While I was writing my debut novel, I was doing a lot of research, excuse me, in the industry. And I was like, I think most writers, when they first start writing, they think, oh, I'm going to go the traditional route. Like, I think
Mhm.
everyone thinks that at first. But the more research I did, the more I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. The big thing, I mean, I have lots of videos on this on my channel. So
Oh, no, I've
there's
seen most of
so
them.
much there's so much information to cover, so I'll try to summarize. But the first thing that really gave me pause is learning that if you go the traditional route, they are not going to do the level of marketing for you that people expect. People see authors like Stephen King and Brandon Sanderson, and they think, oh, that's the marketing I'm going to get if I go traditional. And they don't realize that like publishing is a business and marketing costs money, and these publishing houses, they're saving their marketing power for the big guns. They're saving it for their big authors. And so a vast majority of authors who go traditional, they're going to be in the mid list or lower list category, and they're not going to get that level of marketing. And in fact, when you query agents and pitch to publishing houses and stuff, they're going to ask you how you plan to market yourself. They expect you to market yourself to some degree. So that was a big thing for me because one of the main reasons that people want to go traditional is they think they're going to get all this marketing power. And I learned that no matter which route I go, I'm probably going to have to market myself because the odds of, your debut novel being, getting a 6-figure advance and getting the Stephen King treatment is slim to none. Like if you're a
Yeah.
debut author, you're probably going to be a mid-list or lower list author in these people's eyes. So learning that I wasn't going to get any marketing power was a big letdown. And then I interviewed a bunch of authors. I interviewed both traditionally published and self-published authors. I think I interviewed about 20. All but 2 of them said the same thing, no matter which, if they went traditional or indie, they all said the same thing of don't do it. It's a big mistake and I hate it and it's going to ruin your life. It was very, very pessimistic. Then the last 2 authors I interviewed, one was trad and one was indie. and they both loved it. They both had great things to say. They were, loving life. The indie author had just released their first book, and they were in the process of being about to release their second book. And basically, they had projected that by their third book, they would be able, based on the earnings of the first book and the interest in the second book, they had projected that by their third book, they could be a full-time writer. And because they didn't have the delays that traditional publishing had,
you can do it quicker and just crank
so
them out.
Basically 3 books was going to take them about 2 years to release. So that was cool and exciting information.
Which is stupid fast, by the way. Normally it's like maybe 1 book a year.
Exactly. Then when I talked to the traditional author, she was an older woman, and she loved her publishing house. She loved her experience, but long story short, it took her 10 books. I'm trying to make sure I get the numbers right. It took her 10 books and 20 years, because it's like 1 book every other year, for her publishing house to get her out of the lower/mid-list category, and start giving her marketing power. And so basically, after 20 years of publishing, she was finally able to make writing her full-time job. At this point, she was already at retirement age. But she was very excited, and she's like, if you just wait and pay your dues, one day you'll be able to make writing your full-time job. She was very excited about it, and I was very happy for her. But all I could think is, I don't want to wait 20 years for a publishing house to notice me, So based on the interviews, the marketing power, also the fact that indie authors earn way more royalties than traditional authors, I decided to start with the indie route and at least give it a shot. And if it didn't work out, I figured for my next book, I'd go traditional and see how it went. Fortunately, indie worked out really, really well for me. And that's why I continued to pursue it. I had always had the desire to be hybrid eventually. But my thought process was basically, if I ever go traditional, I want it to be because I'm in a position where I'm going to get the marketing power, where they see me as an asset and they're going to treat me as an asset. So I was kind of waiting for that. Yes. So I was kind of waiting for that opportunity. And when it finally came, I swiped it up.
Gotcha. And it's so funny because I grew up with both of my parents are published authors. My dad is a hobby author. So for him, it was very much part-time. He's got a regular 9 to 5 that he loves and has no interest in quitting. And my mother is a career author. She hit bestsellers and was able to do it full-time, like when I turned like 7 or 8.
Wow.
And yeah, that type of thing. So, I grew up seeing the way a traditional author works and operates. And when it came time for me to when I finished my debut novel, Citadel, and I was trying to figure, okay, do I want to self-publish? Do I not want to self-publish? I hadn't started CaFae Latte yet, so I didn't have any marketing power. I didn't even have 1,000 subs on YouTube. And for me, I did the same research as you and got the same conclusions and reached the exact opposite decision. Because for me, what I wanted with Citadel, even though I knew it was a weird book that might be difficult for publishers to, market and figure out, how are we going to sell this? I still wanted the team to like hold my hand through it, because I'm just like, this is my first book. How do I don't want to have to hunt down a freelance editor that's not going to screw me over. I don't want to have to try to find an artist that's going to charge more than I can afford. I don't like formatting. How do you even do that? Like, it was like the idea of self-publishing it was just so overwhelming to me that I decided, no, I want this to be a team effort, because I'm very much new to this. So I want a team of experts helping me out with this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then once I got that contract, then that's when I started thinking, okay, now I can self-publish some novellas to lead up to this and figure that out. So I came out the gates as a hybrid, but I was determined to do trad publishing first, because like it gave me more security.
Exactly. And that's the thing is a lot of people are either very pro trad or very pro indie. And I'm very pro it depends on the
Yeah,
person and what
it
their
depends
goals
on
are.
the project.
Exactly. It depends on the book you're writing. It depends on what your goals are. It depends on what your strengths and weaknesses are. And that's another thing is when I looked into what traditional publishing houses do, I have a background in business. I have a business finance degree. I've had, a lot of that is taking marketing classes and stuff. And so a lot of it was like, a lot of this is stuff that I'm familiar with in some way, and what I'm not familiar with, I can
Mhm.
learn. So I felt comfortable taking on some of the team aspects on my own, but that's my experience. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
a lot of people, they're not comfortable with that. And I'll talk to them and they'll be like, well, I'm going to go self-publishing because of higher royalty percentages, but I can't afford an editor or I can't afford a cover artist. So I'm just going to do the editing myself and I'm going to do the cover art myself. And I don't know how to do any of the copyright or the formatting or anything. I'll just figure it out. And I'm like, you are telling me so many reasons that you should be going trad. You should be
Yeah.
going like, if you can't afford an editor and you can't afford a cover artist and you don't know how to do any of this business stuff, why are you going indie? Like it doesn't make any sense. So it really depends on the person. And like you said, you could do the same research and be like, okay, this, totally
Mhm.
different route works for me. And
Yeah.
that's how it is. It really depends on each individual writer.
Yeah. No, it's kind of fun because now with every time I start a new book, it is always like, am I gonna try to pitch this to a trad pub or am I gonna do it myself? With Heart of Iron, which is my CaFae Latte book series, I
Mhm.
knew going in this is gonna be self-published because I don't want a trad publisher to try to limit how many books are gonna be in the series or try to extend how many books in this series there's gonna be. With the political aspect happening in this country. These are very queer books. I don't want any censorship
Mhm.
happening. The only thing I'm giving them is the audio rights. And you can do that, by the way, for those listening. Like you can absolutely split the printing rights and the audio rights and the film rights and have them go to 3 different people or
Mhm.
entities. And it's totally fine. And that's basically what we're doing here with CaFae Latte because I sure can't do an audiobook. I don't have the supplies, the equipment, the training. I can't do any of that. But Blackstone Publishing, which did Citadel, is incredible with it.
Mhm.
Um, but when it comes to books like The Witch Who Trades with Death, which is a standalone, yeah, I don't really care. Like, yeah, we'll toss that to Angry Robot and have them do all the work, and then
Right.
I'll market it when they're ready, when they've got it polished and ready.
Mhm. Exactly.
Okay. Oh, so as I mentioned, my mother is an international best-selling author, like was when I was a kid. That's what I grew up with. But she did mention that her first books were self-published. Um, and then she self-published them, and then they got scooped up by a traditional publisher. Kind of like how The Martian happened.
Right.
Um, but she also mentioned that there was, this was 25 years ago, and there was a real stigma against self-published authors because it's like, oh, so you couldn't make it into the trad publishing world and blah 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 blah
Mhm.
blah. Do you is there in your experience, is there still a stigma against self-published authors?
I think the only people who still feel that way, who still, oh, you couldn't make it, are people who don't read, um, people who aren't familiar with the industry. Because at this point, I started self-publishing 10 years ago when there was still a little bit of a stigma, and even back
Mhm.
then, um, only one person ever said anything rude to me about it, and it was an old lady at an assisted living facility. So it's like, a
Oh,
different
so she's going to
generation.
be rude to everyone. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like these days, I feel like there's been so much evidence that self-publishing is very much a choice, a business decision. I mean,
Mhm.
we've seen self-published books get TV deals. I mean, looking at Wool, I mean, they have their own show on Apple now. We're seeing self-published books become New York Times bestsellers. And also, if you look at the traditional publishing industry, they are purposely seeking out self-published authors to scoop up for traditional deals because so many authors are killing it in the indie space. I
Mhm.
know lots of authors who are indie, and traditional publishers are hounding them, asking them, to sign with them. And it's actually more lucrative for them to say indie. So they're not even accepting these deals. I mean, that's kind of how I became hybrid is, I was a self-published author. I was selling really, really well. And 10 Speed Press came to me and was like, hey, do you want to publish a book with us? So I think these days we've seen so much success in the indie space that anyone who kind of has that stigmatized opinion of indie is just not like with the times. They're not aware of what's going on.
Yeah. I do know that, like, just a couple of years ago, people were very wary about self-published books because of, like, they were worried about, like, the quality
Mm-hmm.
of not necessarily the story itself, but, like, the edits.
Right.
You're more likely to have typos and spelling mistakes and formatting issues with a self-published book than with a trad published book. But now, frankly, trad publishing is kind of tanking a little bit. Like, I think it's just the supply and demand problem where there's so much of a demand for certain types of books that they're trying to crank out
Yep.
as much as possible, hounding authors who are in that space, and they're just not giving the time that they used to do
Yeah.
with each book, and it's causing serious problems for them, and the quality of the book suffers entirely. So that's a boon for self-published authors, I guess, because now their quality is now on average as good as a trad published book, I guess. Jesus Christ.
Honestly, and this may be a controversial opinion, but I feel like the whole rapid release model has kind of done, and I totally understand the appeal for what it's worth.
Mhm.
Before people get mad, I totally understand the appeal of rapid release. It's great for readers because they get their books quicker. It's great for authors because they make money faster. I really do get it, and I wish I could write that fast. Like I really, really like. I'm jealous that I can't do it that fast, but there are some people who rapid release and they pump out quality books because they've got a really, great system. But
Mhm.
a lot of the rapid release pressure is causing both in the indie space and traditional space people to skimp on the editing
Mhm.
and to, just there's this pressure to get the books out as quickly as possible, and because of that we're seeing a decrease in quality of books across both spaces. And I kind of wish I wish that there would be less of a pressure to get books out as quickly as possible, because the quality is lacking in both spaces. And
Yeah.
and with indie, there are authors who are like, well, I can't afford an editor, and it's like, oh my gosh, like Kickstarter or go
Yes,
trad,
that's
like
what I do.
right. Like there are options,
Mhm.
and then of course there's always the risk of hiring a schmeditor, someone who's,
Mm.
full of shit, and they do a crappy editing job. And that's always a risk. So that's sort of the risk in the indie space, people going too quickly, hiring a schmeditor, or those are the risks involved there, or just not hiring an editor at all. But in the traditional space, it's this desire to, like get these books out as quickly as possible because rapid release is sort of the new norm. And
Mhm.
also certain authors are getting preferential treatment. So it's sort of like, even if the editors are, have suggestions, if the author doesn't like it, it doesn't matter, like they're
Yeah.
keeping it the way it is. So we're seeing sort of a decrease in quality in spaces. Obviously not universal. There are still amazing high quality books out there. But I just feel like the only way to combat that would be to like ease the pressure of writing books as fast as possible. But I don't see that happening anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially not in this culture of instant gratification
Yes.
type of thing. Like I
Mhm.
I consider myself a pretty fast writer, and or prolific writer at the very least, because I'm constantly writing, I'm constantly creating. If I'm not, I'm dead or comatose.
Mhm.
But like I do that by bouncing between a bunch of different projects, and the only time that I ever rapid release anything is novellas,
Mhm.
not full-length novels. And even so, I make sure all the novellas are written and edited first, and then I release them on a rapid schedule. I think that's the way to do that, is
I
like you
agree.
do your year or two of writing it in the shadows,
Mhm.
and then once you have your 2 to 3 to 4, 5 products, now you can like do boom, 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 boom. but you
Exactly.
still need to put in that time. It's just a matter of who's seeing that time. And yeah, I think that's the way you kind of got to trick your fans a little bit.
No, I agree. The rapid release books that I've seen that have the best quality are the ones where they're written ahead of time, and then it's like, oh, by
Yes.
the way, and you're sitting there going, how did they write another book in 2 months? And it's like, just kidding. They they
Yeah,
took them.
no, they just held it. They just hid it from you.
Right.
Like the way that you hide the treats from the dogs.
Exactly.
No, no, no. It's like, look over here. Look at Stephen King's new one. Uh,
Exactly.
but yeah. Okay. I'm just looking through my questions real quick. So you mentioned earlier, before you getting into writing full time, you had a business marketing job-ish.
I have a degree in business with a concentration in finance. I didn't have a marketing job. I was a stockbroker, which is so much like being a writer, right? It's like pretty much the same thing.
Wait, how is being a stockbroker like being a
I'm
writer?
joking.
I think,
It's nothing like it. It was
okay,
awful.
sorry, that sarcasm went right over my head. My bad. Oh my gosh. Okay. So what led to you going from stockbroker to writing full time? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or was it like a surprise skill that you unlocked after college?
I've wanted to be a writer since I was a kid, back when I was watching Clash of the Titans and stuff. I in the first grade, once a week in my class, we would make and write books out of construction paper and then like present them to the class. And from that moment forward, I was like, I'm going to be an author. Like that's just what I was
Mhm.
like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And so I was that kid who like, in the first grade and the second grade is like writing stupid little stories. I remember I wrote one about a a bumblebee and a butterfly being best friends and stuff. And that's
New
just
Pixar movie.
yeah, exactly. And I was doing that all the way through high school and everything. That's just I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. And I was, studying, reading, writing craft books, and starting a bunch of stories and then never finishing them. Of
Mhm.
course, especially at the time, I was a 90s kid, everyone's like, you're not going to make any money doing writing, so you have to pursue something else. This is never going to happen. So by the time I got to college, the dream was sort of beaten out of me. And I'm one of those, I know it's not common to be like, usually you're either the writing and history person or you're the math and science person, but I'm strange, and I'm English and math and then not great at history and science. I don't know. So I was like, okay, well, I'm good at math. I'll, pursue business and finance and all that good stuff. It was just, the idea was to get the practical, reliable, safe job,
Mhm.
So
Do the
I
nine to
got
five and then do
it,
your writing on the side. The way
it,
the hobby writer, the way that's what
yes.
my dad did.
But even then, I wasn't even writing as a hobby. I was just like, oh, it's never going to happen. So what's the point? I was at that phase, and so I got a job as a stockbroker in finance, and I just remember one day coming home from work and being like, I hate this. Like I hate my job so much. I can't stand it. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to look for a new job, and then I looked for the other job, like online at the jobs that are in my skill set, and I didn't want any of them. I'm like, well, this doesn't sound any better. This sounds worse. I don't want to do any of this shit. And I just remember having this moment of like, I don't think I can live my life just living for my time after work and the weekends and spending 40 hours a week being miserable. And
Mm.
so I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to be a writer. That's always been my dream. I'm just going to pursue writing on the side. I'm going to work on a novel, and if it flops, at least I know I tried. At least I
Yeah.
gave it a shot. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering. So I was a stockbroker by day, and then I'd come home and work on my novel at night. um, and that's what I did for several years. um, the way I transitioned into be a full-time writer is strange. It happened very oddly, but and this is gonna get kind of dark. But basically, my boyfriend at the time, now husband, had a major accident. He broke his spine.
Yeah, you
And
talked about that.
Right. And I quit my job so that I could sign on to be his caregiver, because he had to relearn to walk and all that good stuff. So during that time, I wasn't writing or working. I was just helping, him get better. And there came a point in his recovery where he started to improve and I could resume writing. At that point, I was in the editing phase, so I was
Mhm.
almost ready to release the book. And I had been trying to build sort of a platform, to help promote myself and all that good stuff. And people had told me for a long time that I should do YouTube, because they said I had the personality for it. And I was like, absolutely not. I don't. That's not something I'm interested in. I don't want to put my face on the internet. And when you watch someone you love almost die, it kind of changes your perspective on life and what a limited time we have here. And I decided, you know what, just go for it, risk it for the biscuit. So I created my YouTube channel while I was finishing up my debut novel. And again, my goal was to just writing would be a side gig. And eventually I would go back to work and get, a full-time finance job once Cliff was, my husband was well enough. But the YouTube channel ended up exploding. And because of that, that's, that helped launch my writing, that helped boost the sales and everything. And because of that, that's how I was able to become a full-time writer. I never had to go back to work in finance. I just, made YouTube videos and sold books.
I know, right? I yeah, I started on my YouTube channel officially right after I got out of college, which was 2017, 2018, and those videos sucked. They're all deleted. And
Same.
um and I know, right? And then a lot of my earliest videos that are still up were actually very much inspired by you.
Oh.
The top 10 favorite tropes in this genre, favorite fantasy tropes, female character tropes, and then the worst in
Mhm.
my opinion. And yeah, and it was really fun to do those. And like I was crawling toward 1,000 subscribers. And then the same week I got the publishing contract for Citadel was the week that I hit 1,000.
That's so
And
exciting.
yeah, thank you. And that was 2021. 2020, the pandemic, I got laid off from my marketing job. I actually did work sales.
Mhm.
I was getting your backstory mixed up with mine. And yeah, I worked sales and then I got laid off in 2020. But I live in Minnesota, so our unemployment was really, really good. It's so sad. I was more financially stable and prosperous unemployed that year than I had been at any point in my life thus far
Wow.
as an adult. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And then the unemployment ran out in October, and I needed to get and I tried to, I've been doing more YouTube videos and figuring out the platform, and of course, putting the finishing touches on Citadel and all that jazz. And it just wasn't enough time for me.
Mhm.
Um, so luckily, a family friend owned a restaurant and a wedding business, but this was the pandemic, so the restaurant.
Right.
Um, and I had food service experience, so I got the job without even interviewing, and I kept it for 2.5 years because I was really good at it. Um, and during that time, my literary agent from the for Citadel, we were just like, okay, you should really get on TikTok because like that's where your target audience is. That's like where you're already good on YouTube, so like you're used to being in front of a camera. And I'm just like, another social media platform. I
Right.
barely understand this one. Fine. So, and then I got on it, and then like after like about a year long learning curve of actually of going from crappy videos to decent to, oh wow, people are actually connecting with this. Um, yeah, that's when CaFae Latte started. And then 6 months after CaFae Latte started, I was able to quit the food service job
Nice.
and do content creation full time. I'd saying I'm a full time author is misleading because my books actually don't pay the bills.
Mhm.
It's all the content,
Right.
the online stuff, which is why I'm so pissed at TikTok right now. They're messing around with that policy again. Yeah.
Well, most full-time authors I know have multiple streams of income. For
Oh yeah.
me, so of course I have multiple streams of income. For me, my books are the biggest percentage, but if it was
Mhm.
just like of income, but if it was just book sales, I'd be struggling, you know.
Yeah.
So I also make, ad revenue from my YouTube videos. I have
Mhm.
affiliate relationships, all that good stuff. I have a merch store. But
Mhm.
most authors I know, they make their money through multiple streams of income, and that's kind of one of the things I like about being an author is that you don't have all your eggs in one basket. I make money just by posting
Yeah.
stuff on Instagram. So it's nice
Mhm.
that you've got all these other options. So if you do have a bad book
Yeah.
month, it's like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah, you can
Instagram did well.
kinda have, TikTok as I don't know if you're on that platform. I don't think you are.
I was on for a while, but I was like, he was like, oh gosh, I can't. Like I've on too many platforms, so I still have content there, but I haven't updated in like a year.
Gotcha. Yeah, no. They had a really good monetization policy right around the time I started CaFae Latte. Um, it was for the views that I was getting, which was 100 to 200,000 views per video for the first 24 hours of life. I would get like 3 to 4 grand every month just
Wow.
from TikTok, before taxes.
Hmm.
But like that was the thing, and that was like it was like you could set your clock to it almost.
Hmm.
And now they've made a change where I can maybe expect 800.
Oh gosh, don't you
Yeah,
just love
and
that? It's
that
like thanks, thanks.
yep, no warning, nothing, no announcement, nothing, and it goes into effect this month.
Hmm.
And this is the second time they've done it, and like they did it earlier in October or November, and then switched it back, and now they're switching it back again, and it's just a bunch of BS. And so now I'm just like, okay, well, I can no longer afford to lean on one of the three major pillars for my finances, so now I'm gonna have to start doing more long form YouTube content
Hmm.
because that's just better. And I also have my Patreon, and I do have book sales too, but I can't. I don't. I never rely on sales income, not for books
Hmm.
or for merch, because if you expect a good month and then it turns out sour, you fucked over your entire budget.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
but this way, if I'm only relying on like the steady income streams like Patreon and these days YouTube revenue, well, now all the stuff that I get for book sales and merch sales and even the advances for my tribe publishing stuff, that's just a happy bonus now.
Hmm.
Straight into savings you go.
Exactly. And if it makes you feel better, I think Instagram has had the same kind of, you know,
Mhm.
effect that TikTok had because, and that's something I noticed at first. I was like, "Am I doing something wrong?" Where it was like
Mhm.
I used to get at least 1,000 likes on every post, and then now it's like 100 or something, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"What is going on?" Like
Mhm.
like what is happening here? And then I started researching it, and they said that they changed the algorithm. And then I
Yeah.
even recently saw something that said 100 likes on Instagram is now equivalent to 1,000 likes. I'm like, well, that makes sense, because and then when my post would do really well, I could expect to have hundreds of thousands of likes on a post. And now if a post does really well, it's like tens of thousands of likes. I'm like, oh well, okay. Thanks, Instagram.
Yeah, no, I just hate that they don't warn you about it and they keep it all super secret, and it's
Hmm.
just like, look, I get it. You got a business, you got to protect your corporate secrets, blah 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 blah. But we're trying to have a business out here,
Right.
and if you're constantly playing keep away with with me being able to buy a house, which
Right. Exactly, and they'll change, the ways that you could, like, improve things for yourself. Like, for example, I was using hashtags for years, and then I was doing research, and they're like, "Oh, hashtags don't matter anymore on Instagram." I'm like,
yeah,
"Well, thanks."
and now they've limited it from like 30 to 5,
Mhm.
and it's just like. Oh gosh, no, it's this is why like one of the big piece of advice that I got from an author was to have a newsletter list, a
Mhm.
subscriber list, not just because like this is a direct line to your fans, which yes, I have used that. I'm supposed to email them once a week, but I always forget. So it's like maybe once a month. Subscribe to my newsletter, you will not get spammed. And but like it's also like that list is yours.
Right.
You can't, it's not like with Facebook, with TikTok, with YouTube, where all the information, everything that you put out there belongs to someone else
Right.
technically, and they can bring it, shut it down whenever they want. Like,
Mhm.
no, this subscriber list is yours, and you can email these people anytime you want. It might end up in their spam folder, but like,
Mhm.
it's like emailing anyone, but it's like, it's yours. So
Right.
protect that thing with your life and grow it.
Yes. And whenever authors tell me, "Oh, I've been dragging my feet. I haven't started a newsletter." I'm just like, I just want to slap them. I'm like, and I understand a lot of people have the same worries. They're like, well, I don't know what to. I'm boring. I don't know what to say about myself. And I'm just like, if they are subscribed to your newsletter, they do not think you're boring. You
Yep.
are their rock star. And the thing
Mhm.
is like my newsletter, if I can't think of anything to talk about, I just show a picture of my dog and people, and those are the most popular newsletters. Like, oh my gosh, Butters is so cute. Like it doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to be like, I'm a New
Mhm.
York Times bestseller. Like, the last newsletter I did, I just talked about my favorite books I read in 2025, and people get excited because now they have new books to put on their TBR. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be crazy. It's just got to be consistent. And
Yeah.
and you just got to understand that these people are signing up because they think you're cool and interesting.
Yeah.
So stop
And they
being
like your stories,
right.
so write some stories.
Exactly. It's and it's just people are doing themselves such a disservice. And I'll talk to people and be like, "Oh, I haven't sent out a newsletter in months," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like you're screwing yourself," you know.
Yeah, no, mine was start of December. So I'm not that bad. Yeah, gosh, I found out like a couple of years ago, my mom was doing a book giveaway.
Hmm.
And she does apparently she did what she does every time, which is, she collects the email addresses for people entering the giveaway, which is what you're supposed to do. And half the reason you do a giveaway is to grow your subscriber list. And then after the giveaway is done and the winners are selected and it's sent out, she deletes the emails.
No.
She does, and I'm just like, "What?" Like, she told me that, and I'm like, "What the hell? Why?" And she goes, "Well, like, I promised them because, like, I'm not gonna spam them. Like, why would I keep their emails?" I'm like, "To be a part of their newsletter so you can tell them about new book releases and, like,
Right.
remind them that you exist every week. Like, what? How have you gone 20 years as a best-selling author and you delete the email addresses?"
Yeah, and that's the thing is people forget that the newsletter isn't spam. Your newsletter shouldn't just be buy my book, buy my book. The newsletter is supposed to be entertaining. It's like it's
Mhm.
not spam. Like you got to
Yeah.
understand that that's not the same thing. And if people felt it was spam, they can just remove themselves from the newsletter. It's fine.
Exactly. Unsubscribe
Right.
or, immediately, block to the spam folders type thing.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I try not to because I definitely remember to do my newsletter when I have new merch, but
Mhm.
like, or a new book out or whatever. But like, I do try to do like, new announcements for the YouTube channel or like, new arc, new weird thing happening in the world today.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, all that stuff.
Right.
I do feel weird about like because it's my parents' dog's not my dog, and it's my roommate's cat's not my cat. But everyone thinks that Artemis is my cat. I'm like, no, it's Sunny. It's my roommate's. I don't know why she's
Well,
crawling on my lap.
you're like, you're it's like it's like a adjacent to yours, it's like being
Mhm.
there, it's like they're your niece or nephew.
There right? So obviously, like most of your YouTube channel is like self-publishing tips. What is the most common question that you get regarding self-publishing?
I'm trying to okay.
I should
The
have sent
most
you these questions in advance.
Oh no, it's all good. It's just I get so many questions, and I'm like thinking, okay, what's the most for me? It's like, the things that pop into my mind are just mostly like mistakes people make, and I'm just like, oh, okay. This is sort of like self-publishing and traditional publishing combined,
Mhm.
where a lot of people will mistake a vanity press for a
Ugh.
self-publishing, or they'll mistake it for traditional publishing, and they'll be like, okay, so they'll be like, I'm traditional publishing and I'm spending $10,000, and I'm like, wait, what,
Can you
or
explain for those who might not know what a vanity press
sure.
is exactly?
So a vanity press is a publishing house, I guess you could call it, where essentially you are paying them to publish your book. This is more or less a scam, because
Mhm.
if you were to traditionally publish your book through a traditional publishing house, they are supposed to pay you. You are not supposed to pay a dime. I recently traditionally published How to Write Romantasy. I spent $0 on that publication, but they paid me a lot of dollars to publish that book.
Same with my work.
So with a vanity press, you are paying them, which is not the norm. It's not what you're supposed to do when you go traditional. And their whole gig is to upsell you. So they'll be like, oh, if you spend $5,000 more, we'll throw in a marketing deal. And if you spend this amount of money, and they make a lot of empty promises that they're never going to fulfill. I know people who have gone with vanity presses and they've been like, they promised to get me in Oprah's book club and they promised to make me a New York Times bestseller. No legitimate publishing house will ever make these promises to you because they cannot, you know, they can't
legally
promise
can't they can't guarantee any of that.
Exactly. So. They have no idea if that'll happen, you know? So if someone's making you all these promises and you have to pay them, it's probably a vanity press. It is just essentially not legit. And there are people who also go the indie route and they think that going with a vanity press is independently publishing, because when you publish independently, you're paying for the editor, you're paying for the cover art and stuff. So they see paying a vanity press as, oh, that's the payment that I'm making to to publish independently. It's not the same thing. I cannot emphasize enough. I would not recommend.
You're their customer, not the fans.
It's and they don't care.
As a saleswoman and as an author, vanity presses just drive me up a tree. I hate them. They are the biggest scam.
Exactly.
And it's like one of those things where it's like, supply demand, you're trying to like sell something to people. I get that. But like, you're also supposed no, it's just taking advantage.
Vanity presses are sort of like MLMs or pyramid schemes in the sense that they are promising, oh, we're going to help make your book successful. And with publishing houses, they, like a normal publishing house, they make money off of your book doing well. So it's in their interest for your book to succeed. With a vanity press, they make their money off of scamming authors. So their whole income is getting as many authors as possible to pay them a ton of money to publish through them. And then they don't end up caring whether or not your book does well, because that's not how they make their income. So they'll just slap your book online and that's it. They won't care if it's professionally edited. They won't care if it's got a nice cover. They won't, market it. They won't care if it's available in audiobook and all that good stuff. They're making their money off of you, not whether or not your book does well. So I mean, not only are you going to go broke if you go the vanity route, your book is going to tank. It's not going to do well.
Yeah, no, you never pay a publisher. Even like the tiny publishers that I worked for that like couldn't afford to pay me like anything. Or like, there was one here in Minnesota. It's gone now, but it was run by a couple of friends of mine. And they ran it for like a few years, and I was regularly giving them short stories. And it was only like, I don't know, 10, 15 bucks a story. Like absolutely nothing. It was kind of spare change, but like they still paid me.
Right.
And that worked out really, 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 really well. It was a big thing to help them grow their Patreon page. It was a really big day when I went from like the flat rate of $10 a story to, hey, we can actually now give you a percentage of our Patreon income. We're giving you $11 now, and next month maybe it'll be $12. And I'm like,
nice.
This is great. So like there is getting started with smaller publishing companies. That's what I did. Like I wrote and sold a bunch of short stories to magazines and tiny publication presses that literally could not afford to give me an advance payment or royalties. It was pure exposure.
Right.
And a lot of times people who say we can't afford to pay you, but it'll give you great exposure, they're lying. They're just trying to rip you off. But there are genuinely small companies that can't afford to, and they're very upfront about that. And you kind of go in knowing that, and it's like, this is purely to build my author portfolio, my writing resume, because once you can put on your cover letter, I have published XYZ stories in these specific magazines and publications and blogs and whatnot, well, it's a little bit easier to land that next actual sale.
Right. And I think also when you look at people who say, I'm going to pay you in exposure, I think you have to look at what company is saying it, because if it's a
Mhm.
smaller company, it makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
they're not going to have as much money to provide. I had a huge company. I don't want to say because I don't want to get in trouble, but let's just say everyone has this on their phone. Okay, everyone,
Okay.
it's an app that everyone has on their phone, on their desktop. I'm looking at the app on my laptop right now. They wanted to pay me an exposure, and I'm like, you have collaborated with the biggest celebrities in the world, and you want to pay me an exposure?
You have billions in revenue. Cough
Yes.
up.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I don't, that sounds very strange to me when
Mhm.
you are, potentially $1 billion company. But okay,
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
You want to pay me
Yeah,
an
no.
exposure.
And that's one of the reasons why I don't do sponsorships or affiliates or anything, because
Hmm.
I don't have the time or the patience to deal with that BS. Like, no. And on the other end of it, when Heart of Iron was coming out in October, and I thought, you know what, it'd be really cool. I'm not a makeup girl at all.
Hmm.
But it'd be really cool. I do follow a couple of gals on TikTok who do these incredible like full body fantasy makeup type of thing, and it's just like they're so cool. Like it
Hmm.
is genuine art. They're the ones like you look at that as like, oh yeah, makeup is artistry,
Right.
right? And I thought, you know, it'd be really cool because the fairies that I have in Heart of Iron don't look the way we think they do. Like they have like, you know, one of the main characters has purple skin and the other one has blue skin with like a white and gray marbling effect
Oh, nice.
over it. That's their version of freckles is
Uh-huh.
marbling. And you know, just like all these are, you know, we got witches, we got demons, we got like, you know, all these types of cool things that, you know, dragons, you know. So let's do that. So I approached one. I had to go through her agent to do it. And I was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this? And they responded back and they were like, yeah, no, I would, but I would have to charge like, because they had like over 1 million followers
Right.
on TikTok and they get a ton of people.
Hmm.
It's, you know, they were there, they'd have to charge me like 5 grand or something like that.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, I'm sure that I would get enough sales just from that to make that worth the while or at least break even,
Hmm.
but I don't have that in my back pocket right now.
Right.
Um, and I did try to negotiate down or even
Hmm.
do a content swap, but they just weren't interested in that. And at no point did I ever think, I'll pay you with exposure, because first of all, they have twice as much and then some
Right.
followers as I do. So
Hmm.
that just would have been laughable. And it's just an insult because like I want to pay them what they're worth. And like it's a point of pride for me that I can pay my editor, that I can pay my virtual assistant and candle maker, that I can like help, like I'm helping them out. I'm financially moving them to better parts in the world.
Right.
So and I don't understand why people don't like to do that, but like, yeah, okay, well, your price is 5 grand. I can't pay that. I'll try to catch you on the sequel.
Right.
Have a good day. It's that easy.
Right. Exactly. And I love that you mentioned like, like wanting to pay these people, because we have the issue right now of everyone, like the AI art, and it's, infiltrate,
Uh,
I know, and it's infiltrating the writing
Generative
space.
AI. I
Yes,
want that bubble to burst already.
and we see a lot of writers who are like, "Oh, don't use generative AI in your writing," but then they'll use generative AI for the art, for like the character
Mhm.
art. And I'm like, it's the same thing, it's still it's plagiarism and for writing, and it's theft of art, And like for me, like I mean, obviously it takes money, and if you can't afford it, totally understandable. Kickstarter, or
Mhm.
save your money until you can afford it. But I love hiring character artists to create my characters and stuff. And what not only is just a generative AI art, unethical, but it's not as fun because you're not, getting involved in the creative process with another person and watching them
Yeah.
create something special for you.
One of my favorite things, one of the bonuses for my patrons over on Patreon, I believe it's the $5 tier, is they get a free sticker every month. And it's a character sticker. And the thing is, every month I go with a different artist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really fun to like choose an artist. You know, like I contact a ton of them. Whoever gets back to me is like, yeah, no,
Right.
I'll do this for, you know, $50, $100, you know, whatever their price is for just the one character. And I'll be like, okay, great. Like we've done these characters so far, so I'd like you to choose one of these 5. Go for it. And I don't even give them a prompt. I'm just
Right.
like, because most of them are fans, so a lot of them already know these characters. And I'll just be like, you know, choose one of these 5 characters, or you know what, it's Black History Month, so go with Nicole, please. Or
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a Greek mythology thing. You know, I'm kickstarting this February for my Greek myth retelling,
Nice.
Monstrous,
Mm-hmm.
Psyche and Eros. Uh,
Ah, that's so
yeah,
exciting.
I ironically the romance part is like not a big part of it. It's, maybe I should
No.
have chosen a different myth, but yeah, no. So that one might be, you know, the Sphinx.
Mm-hmm.
Who is a character. You know, like there's a cool bunch of things, and I just love seeing, you know, this is what, you know, people say. Oh, it's generative AI. You just put in the prompt, and the computer makes you something. Yeah, but this way, it's actually good when it comes out. And you know, it's really cool to see, you know, people have their own interpretations of these characters. You know, some super silly, super serious, you know, serious style but like a goofy pose. Like one of them was the werewolf Patrick, and it was done very realistically. And so you think, oh, it's serious, it's great, and he's not smiling or anything, but he's, you know, holding out his hands like this, and in each one of his between each one of his fingers is a set of dice, because he's a D&D nerd, and it's like just this weird silly thing. And I love seeing that, because it's like I have created this whole thing, this whole story, all these characters, and it's phenomenal to see which ones other people connect with,
Right.
and their interpretations of it and what it means to them. And like a lot of times they'll come up with something that I never would have thought of, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just so cool.
I love that. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And when I work with character artists to some degree, I mean, like there are certain things that I want it to be accurate. Like for example, and this isn't so much an issue with character artists, but just even like fans. Like I have a lot of, you know, people of color in my books, and like with fans will be like,
Mhm.
look, I drew a picture of Tobias and he's a redhead. I'm like, okay, well, he's
Whose white
Latino.
baby is that?
Yeah, he's Latino, but okay, you know, just things like that. And so
Mm.
things like that, I want it to be accurate. So I'll remind my character artist, okay, so he has tawny skin, you know, he's Latino, he's a brown man, you know, things like that. But after that, I'm kind of like, okay, well, Layla's dress is purple. Here are some ideas. Have fun with it. You know, it's just
Yeah.
like I like to
Yeah.
see their interpretation of things.
Yeah. No, it's like give me a vaguely Greek aesthetic.
Right.
Go. It's yeah, no, it's really cool. It's one of my favorite things about, like, I have a hard time collaborating with like other creators in terms of like the skits and stories itself, because I tend to be
Mhm.
very particular and protective of like the story and characters itself, and how they're
Right.
going to behave and how they're going to act, and you know what they believe and all that jazz. But in terms of things of just like art or like fan fiction, yeah, it's
Right.
fanfic.
Right.
Do
Exactly. What I could never have like a co-writer. Like I could never write a book with someone else because I'm very anal about like being in control of the story details. But
Mhm.
then outside of the book, I'm just like have fun. Like I had the map of the world designed for the Savior's Army, and I just told, you know, I basically just told her the areas in the that are in the book that need to show up on the map, and
Mhm.
then like outside of that, have fun. Like, you know, make it
Yeah.
beautiful. You know, I know some people are very anal about, well, it needs to be this amount of miles in here. And I'm just like, I just want it to be beautiful. And I want, this is the map designer. She's the pro. I want her
Mhm.
to use her skills. I'm not the pro. So I'm like, make it pretty. Do what you
Yeah.
want. Whatever you think will look good. And she added like dragons and sea monsters in the water. And I was like, oh, it's so, you know, I just want them to have fun with it.
He's like, God, when Angry Robot was doing The Witch Who Trades with Death, my dark fantasy novel that came out last March, they were like, we want to do a map. And I'm like, okay, we'll do a map. And they're like, well, we need you to tell our map maker, like, you know, our artist about that. I'm like, I don't know. There's only 2 places that are mentioned here. Like, yeah, I've created a whole world, but 80% of the book is spent in this tiny little mountain town.
Right.
And you want a global map? What? It's like
People
people.
I had that same issue with the Savior's Champion and the Savior's Sister. Both of those books take place in either underground or in a fortress. And it's like, do you just want a map of the palace? Like, do you want a map of the underground tunnel? It's just a fucking tunnel, like
It's a line.
right. It's a line. Like people were like, well, why is there no map? I'm like, because they don't go anywhere. But for the Savior's Army, they're traveling across multiple realms. So I'm like, okay, now we can have a map, but there's just no point to it for the first two books. Like, what do you want? They're in the same spot the whole time.
Yeah, no, it's whatever. I mean, and I did work with them, and I'm just like, okay, well, like here are some places that are mentioned. They never go there, but like, she's from a desert who's like that's probably way up there, and then she starts the story in this capital that's in the middle of the jungle, and then it's on a river, and then she's got to cross the mountain kingdom, and then some mountains, and then there's the town.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Yeah,
there.
That's
and
it.
then they did over add a little poison dart frog on the compass of which is a big symbol in the book. So perfect, excellent. All right, I'm happy. Right, we've been yapping for like an hour. I have one more question for you, and then I will release you back into the wilds from which you came. Hold on, if my computer will actually work with me. Thank you. Okay. So, you talk a lot about sexism, both like in the stories that you read and also what you deal with in real life. I remember in a couple of videos you've mentioned like guys coming up to you at author events offering to be your mentor, and it turns out that they've never published or even written a book, and by that time you were already published, if not a bestseller. So they should be asking you to mentor them. What is your favorite or craziest or weirdest or whatever encounter that you've had either with a sexist or a person who maybe didn't realize they were being a sexist?
I immediately have two stories that just they're the first thing that come to mind, and I talk about it. I have a little writing Discord server, and it's just they've become just like inside jokes in the server. Everyone always brings it up. So the first one, I wouldn't so much say that this was sexist. I will say the person was extremely polite and like as respectful as you can be, but it was one of those situations where, like I said, I didn't feel like violated, but it was one of those things where it's like, I'm sure this has never happened to a male author.
Where, a little chauvinistic-y.
Where someone messaged me very politely, like I said, very respectful, but they asked if they could buy my used underwear, specifically 5-day wear. And they said whatever. Specifically, and they said they would offer whatever price. They're like, just name your price, and like I said, it was very much a business transaction. They're
offering to pay you,
but I did not respond. I'm not even like kink shaming. It's like, you know what, if you like to sniff underwear, good for you. I don't even like, and like I said, he was very polite and kind. My big thing is like, I don't think I can wear the same pair of underwear for 5 days. That's just like too gross. That's like not hygienic, but it was just
like time and place. Like, if you were on OF,
right,
that'd be one thing. That would be a reasonable thing.
Right.
Well, not even in air quotes. I would argue that would kind of be a reasonable thing to ask an OF person or someone in like that line of work. But that's not your line of work.
Exactly. And also there are entire like communities and like pages where you can buy used underwear. So it's like, just go there. But apparently they like having the used underwear of their favorite like people they're fans of or something. That's what they said in the thing, and I was like, okay, well, you're not getting mine. I'm sorry. So I didn't respond, but it was one of those moments where it's like, I don't think any male authors had to deal with that. But my favorite mentor story. Okay. So of course it was a middle-aged man. He was in his 50s or 60s. And he offered to mentor me, and he's like, I read your book. It was, and he starts trying to give me constructive criticism and stuff on the book. And I'm just like, okay. And the constructive criticism, and I'm not, first of all, I'm one of those people, like I like to say I'm one of those people who, if I have a booger in my nose, I want to know. So like, I'm the kind of person where like, if I want you to tell me, but once the book is out, unless it's like a typo or something I could fix, once the book is out, it's like, I can't really do anything with this. Like, tell me beforehand. But also, so that being said, I'm open to constructive criticism and things like that. But once the book is out, there's nothing I can do. And also, the constructive criticism wasn't accurate, if that makes sense. Like, it was like, oh, so you just don't, that's, you don't know how grammar works. Okay. So it was,
Okay.
he's trying to, like, he was, he's giving me constructive criticism. And I'm like, well, actually, that's a grammatic, what you're saying is a comma splice. So I can't do that, but that's besides the point. So he's like, well, he was just trying to, puff out his chest. So he's like, I could be your mentor, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, I'm a published author too. I'm like, oh, really? Like, why don't you show me your book? And it was indie, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm an indie author too. I can't remember what the name of the book was. He designed the cover himself. It was definitely made in like clip art, like Microsoft Paint or something. And the cover was, I will never forget, it was Jesus on the cross, nailed on the cross, and the Grim Reaper is standing next to him with a scythe, and then he's smoking a cigarette. And again, this is all like, I kid you not, like using like the paint bucket tool on Microsoft Art. It's like and I don't mean like it's not, it was very like, like the wobbly lines and everything. And it 1000% looked like it would be the cover of a garage heavy metal band's mixtape in the 90s. Like, that's what it looked like. And I was just like, oh man. And then he starts immediately complaining about how there's a typo on the first page and how there are so many typos that he missed and all this stuff. And then you flip through it and it's just, it's just not even legible. It's like not even readable. Like, it's just, it's bad, but this is his masterpiece and he's going to mentor me. And at this point I was already like an Amazon bestselling author. I was writing full time with my work. I had professional covers and stuff like that.
But you don't have a penis, so ergo you must not know what you're doing.
I don't have the audacity of a mediocre middle-aged white man. And so I was like, no, I'm good. And he was like totally taken aback that I didn't want him to mentor me. I was like, no, I'm fine. He goes, but I have so much wisdom to offer you. Like, what about the comma splices, And so, I stopped responding to him. So he sent me a video. He's like, this is proof that I can be your mentor. And he sent me a video of him doing push-ups.
What?
He's like, see, I can be your mentor. And look how many, I wish I could make it make sense. Or like,
go to the gym, baby. Like,
it's just this middle-aged guy doing push-ups on his floor. Like, look at, I didn't watch the whole thing. I just saw him starting to do push-ups and I was like, okay, I'm done.
It reminds me of like those guys who think that like, all women want is a beefy, fit man who like has a chiseled jaw and all.
Right.
Like, in the geek circles, is like the people who don't understand how like, the Snyderverse Superman, like obviously Henry Cavill is what all women want, and they're baffled by the fact that no, most straight women want the Superman of the James Gunn version, who is not chiseled and like, showing up, beefing up his chest or anything like that. Like, no, he's a goofball.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what we like about him. It's like, it's more than just muscles. Muscles doesn't make everything. Like,
and it's just so funny because this guy, he was my dad's age, and it's like, you think that mentality would be out of his system, but no, it's like, here's me doing push-ups, and at the time I was like 27, and it was just so gross. And I'm just, this guy's trying to school me on, when he doesn't even understand grammar, and he's got so every once in a while my writing group will be talking about like, oh, I saw this book cover and it was pretty bad, and they're like, was the Grim Reaper smoking a cigarette, like, and I wish I saved
There's some push-ups, it'll look better.
Right. I wish I saved it because I cannot emphasize enough. Like, it was just like Microsoft Paint, like, the squiggly, like they use the little brush tool, all flat colors. And it's just Jesus hanging on the cross and the Grim Reaper, smoking that cigarette. And the title wasn't readable because it was that heavy metal font or like writing. And it just looked like it should be like this. Yeah, this is my garage band Bone Crusher. Come watch us. In the 90s, that's what it looked like.
Wow. Well, thank you for that.
If I had to suffer with it
as an author now. I really do. Sometimes, you end up with that little tiny bit of imposter syndrome, especially like in my experience, it's gotten worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Citadel and the first Black novellas were coming out in 2023, I barely had a fan base. I didn't have it, like it was my first, debut, like, it was whatever. And now that I have fans, it's like, oh, I can disappoint them now. And now I can't disappoint them nearly as badly as that guy
Exactly.
to disappoint anyone.
But he's totally oblivious because he thinks he's mentor material, and I just could not believe that he's asking to be my mentor, and then he's telling me, he's pointing out all the typos in his book, and I'm like, wow, you really know how to sell yourself. You know what'll seal the deal? Some push-ups. Go for it. Go for it, big guy.
Wow. Okay. Um, Thank you so much seriously, thank you for coming on to my channel. For those of you who want to check out Jenna's channel, her socials, her books, they are all going to be linked in the description of this video, so definitely go check them out. Um, yeah, that's the important thing. Anything
Thank
else
you
to
so
add,
much.
Jenna?
Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. I had a great time.
Awesome. All right. Goodbye. I am ending the recording. Maybe if my computer's going to work.